Welcome to the first episode of the Cork Creative Podcast. We have started this podcast to provide all the wonderful people working imaginatively and innovating in the creative arts and in business a platform to discuss their journey to now, plans for the future and lessons learned. If you would like to learn more, please visit corkcreative.ie. I am Patrick Kiley, your host. I'm the founder of Flux Learning, a digital education company proudly situated in Clonakilty, County Cork, where I live and work. But that is more than enough about me. Today, for this inaugural podcast, I am delighted to be joined by Caragh Bell, a Skibbereen native, mother to 5 wonderful children, French and English teacher in Sacred Heart Secondary School in Clonakilty and a rising star of the literary world, with 5 books published and another well in train. As we will certainly discuss today, Caragh's route to being an author with Poolbeg Press is not a typical one. Caragh is a huge Game of Thrones fan, well at least until the last season, and all of Caragh's readers can be assured that she will not keep them waiting for her next books, given her prodigious work rate and prolific writing. So without further ado, welcome to Cork Creative, Caragh.
Thank you.
So I suppose we'll address the pandemic elephant in the room immediately. How are you getting on as a frontline worker since September 2020 when Irish schools reopened?
Well, personally, in my context, we're getting on really well. Our school has been adept at dealing with the pandemic, really. This is personally, obviously, but we sanitize constantly. We're always wearing masks. The kids are really good. We've one-way systems and staggered lunchtimes. It's weird. You feel a bit isolated. You don't really see your colleagues as much, but with the news of the vaccine now, I mean, it's short-lived, really, hopefully. So I'm just dying for it all to go back to normal. But like, having said that, we're getting on with it, and I'm much happier to be in school. I think the kids are happier to be in school, so I'm hoping it'll remain that way.
Okay, very good. It's great to hear that you're getting on so well indeed.
Oh yeah.
On top of your teaching and the increased workload of pandemic teaching, you're still actively writing. So can you describe what your writing process is? How do you trigger yourself to write, so to speak?
Yeah, my writing process depends, I suppose, what stage of my life I'm at. So like I suppose when I started writing novels in 2011, I had 3 children, and I had a lot more time. But when I self-published then in 2015, I had 4 and I was still managing. But at the moment I have 5. So it's challenging, so I try and write on a Sunday, but I've always been writing ever since I was in junior infants. When I started, my news was always highly entertaining. My teachers loved it. It was all made up, and about my horse. We lived in the middle of town. I mean, there was no way we had stables, but full of imagination. So, I work at weekends. As you know, as a teacher, we get great holidays, so I work during those as well. But about 3 years ago, I was really in my stride. I'd get up at 5 in the morning. Oscar, my last baby, so I thought, was 3, and he was civilized. So I'd get up and I'd have my coffee, and I wrote my 4th book, Echoes of Grace, in about 6 months. I was just really in the zone. I'd go off to school and I was happy out. And then Phelim came along, big surprise. And I mean, he's just gorgeous, but Jesus, everything changed. I had no time. I was absolutely inundated with deadlines. I just signed with Poolbeg. I signed with them when I was 7 months pregnant with him, and it's just been crazy. So I get guilty when I don't write. So I'm really, I really have to make an effort now to get to the keyboard at weekends, and I do, and I always feel better for it. It's good for my mental health. It's different to teaching. It's different to my day job, but I absolutely love it. But I think the big thing is, coffee is good. The morning is good for me. Don't be precious about letting your kids watch TV. I mean, my child could recite Peppa Pig, and that's fine. Don't worry about your house being, messy or whatever. You can't do everything. And the big thing as well is, walking, go out and walk, and listen to music, and that really inspires me as well. So yeah, it's busy, but I love it.
A creative writer from an early age, and no, I
Yeah.
can speak to the productivity that comes from busyness. Indeed.
And I mean, you always have to ask, somebody said that, ask a busy person if you want anything done. And it's so true because, when I started writing my first book, I had just started a master's in education in UCC, and I had 3. My baby was Lewin, my third. He was 6 months, and it was just hectic. But you know, I loved it. I loved writing. I loved, compartmentalizing my day and making it, an hour here, an hour there. So I got way more done. I'm much more productive when I'm busy.
And I suppose the genre of your writing and the
Yeah.
role models for your writing. So can you speak to the audience about that a little bit too, please?
Yeah, so the genre, I suppose, would be called popular fiction. So it's easy to read. It's kind of funny, fast moving, pure escapism, really. I like writing books that I like to read myself. The type of book that you take on holiday, you don't really have to think too deeply about. It doesn't upset you or make you sad. It just, floats along and it's nice. And but the one thing about my books, I suppose, that I feel is a little bit different to the kind of normal conventional chick lit would be I kind of look at the male and the female perspective. So it's sort of looking at both their kind of emotional vulnerability as opposed to just the woman. And I just feel like the world today is saturated with gloomy stories. And even when I'm on Twitter or Facebook, I'm always reading awful things. So why not create worlds where this isn't, a major reality, and you do have your happy endings and all of this. And I suppose my role models are as many. I mean, I was an avid reader as a child, and but I suppose nowadays I love Jane Austen, which is really, oh, I know, old school romance, but I do love her, and I low-key obsess about Mr. Darcy. I love Emily Bronte, actually, and I'm actually teaching Wuthering Heights at the moment, so I'd forgotten about how wonderful it is, how great it is. But my favorite novel of all time is The English Patient. I just love that. I read it over and over. But actually, in when I was younger, I read a lot of Jilly Cooper, um because she was funny and a bit, I kind of emulate her a little bit, actually, not in the kind of the bunkbuster side of it, but actually she would have written maybe 12 books where you would have cameos from different characters in different contexts, and I loved that. I loved a character I met maybe in book 2 popping up in book 5, and I knew them already, and it was just at a different time in their life. So I do emulate her in that way. And actually, I wrote to her, God, a couple of years ago now, telling her how much I admire her and how wonderful she is. And she actually wrote back to me personally. And now we write to each other all the time. And I have a little puppy, Romeo, and she has a dog, Bluebell, and they're dog pals. And they actually send each other cards. But she is incredible. I mean, she's so successful, but so humble and just lovely. And I mean, I did an interview with the Irish Examiner this year, actually, with Sue Leonard, a lovely journalist. And I mentioned about Jilly, and she said, I wrote to Jilly with the article, and I said, look, I mentioned your books and blah, blah, blah. And she sent me this gorgeous letter thanking me from the bottom of her heart for, mentioning her. And I just felt, oh my God, she's just class. She's just lovely, a legend.
No, that's great. I mean, and it's, I suppose, as you said, there's a time for easy reading and there's a time for the more
Yeah,
gloomy. But I think particularly in the times
yeah.
we living in at the moment, more people are reaching for the Lee Child books than the Dostoevsky books, shall we say?
Yeah,
So we
exactly.
can
As
definitely.
I always say, nobody reads Ulysses by the pool. And if they do, like, oh my
They're
God,
masochists.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's exactly it.
No, fair enough. And um, I would have noticed when I was back in my hot desking days in Ludgate and Skibbereen, you would have been calling in there and you would have been frequenting the Ludgate as well with your MacBook Air typing away.
Yeah.
How did having a space like the Ludgate help you in your writing when you had
Well,
such a hectic home life?
yeah, like my fifth book, obviously I was writing when Phelan was a newborn, and it was hell on earth, because there was just stolen moments, no structure, and I need structure in my writing. So I met a friend of mine who was hot desking in Ludgate, and she said, why don't you go down? And I said, no, I always thought it was for like enterprisey people, or solicitors or people like that. And she said, no, 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 go down and suss it out. So I've go down there. I've been there constantly now for the last 2 years. It's been my savior, to be honest, because I do half days. They facilitate me because I only pop in and out. But I absolutely love it. My sixth book, which will be out next year, owes its existence to Ludgate, because when I go there, I'm in the zone. My schedule is too hectic at home. I go down and I spend 2 hours or 3 hours really working hard, and and I'm in great form after it. But actually, they're so cute down there. They framed a picture of my fourth book and they put it on the wall, so it's up there now with Chariots of Fire and War of the Buttons, and and then there's my book in the middle, and they're just gorgeous. I feel like they're almost like part of my family, it's great. So I go there now. They're facilitating me at the moment because they don't open on Sundays, but they leave a fob for me in O'Neill's Coffee, and I go in on a Sunday and I'm all alone and I do, a little bit, and do you know what? It's brilliant. They're great.
Sure. No, it's what I liked about the place, well, aside from the fact that there was gigabit fiber and it had all the facilities that you could possibly need as a techie, it's also the sense of community in there. And there
Yeah.
was it was easy to have a conversation, and I suppose it'll be great to be able to get back to that once the COVID times are fully behind us. But it's a
Yeah.
no, it's a great facility to have. It's something every town should have, hopefully, at some point. I suppose as well now, speaking back to the writing process and not to distill it down into a kind of an antiseptic process, but how would you think that your writing process has evolved from book to book?
Oh, massively, massively. I mean, when I started off, I hadn't a clue. I had the basic story, and I think that's why I was signed with Poolbag. Actually, they saw the potential of the storytelling, but oh my God, not even, I suppose, capitals, knowing where to put commas, knowing how to, even divide up into chapters. So, I mean, I was a neophyte. I really hadn't a clue. But when I signed with them, we edited my self-published trilogy and we redrafted it, and it was incredible. So how have I changed? I suppose my first trilogy was based in Cork. It was, the character went to a fictional university with a West Wing and an old bar, and all these places, and it was very local. And then I kind of got a bit more, I suppose, brave, and was heading to New York and Venice and Antibes and all this. And then suddenly I was writing about the rich and famous, and I absolutely love it because I'm glued to The Crown at the moment, season 4, and the reason I like it is because I'm fascinated by the mighty, and then how dysfunctional everything is, and it's wonderful, and you kind of get reminded of The Merchant of Venice. All that glisters is not gold. That idea that Shakespeare even did it. Like, he had a Prince Hamlet and he had a King Lear. He didn't have an ordinary Joe Soap, because we like to see the mighty fall. So in my books, they don't particularly fall, but they do hit roadblocks, and they hit all these things, and it's interesting reading about that life, I suppose, because it's so different to your own. So yeah, I've changed. I've gone from Cork to kind of New York, I suppose. But it's great, and it's really interesting to research and everything like that, and Google is just my best friend. I love it. And I even go there. I went to New York last year because my fifth book is set there, and I followed in the footsteps of my main character, and it was just amazing. It was great. And and people are so helpful as well when you email asking for information. They're just brilliant. So yeah, it's just enjoyable.
So I suppose the canvas has enlarged to an extent to take
Yeah.
in
And you get,
worldwide jet set.
yeah, you get braver as well. Like, I'm more courageous now, and I'm more, confident, I suppose, because when you start off, you're just you really don't know what you're doing, and you don't know anybody in the industry. And now I have, not contacts, but I know people, and I'm a lot more, I suppose, thick-skinned than I was when I started. And and it's all a learning curve, and I think I learn and learn and learn, and hopefully get better. But yeah, it's good.
Oh, it's great. I mean, and you mentioned previously as well that you went the self-published route. And
Yes.
this is certainly a route, and you've mentioned this in previous interviews with the Southern Star, for instance, that you
Mm.
liked, I suppose, that there was a certain element of control, as in you controlled your own schedule and you controlled your own deadlines. And I certainly know of colleagues, be that in University College Cork or just in general, who are very curious about the self-publication route,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
always are a little bit approach it with certain trepidation.
Yeah.
So can you just walk us through your experience with self-publishing, how you came to self-publish, and what do you think of the overall process and experience?
Okay, so I sent half a manuscript to Pullbag back in 2006, and it was just around the recession time was about to start, and there was a huge moratorium on publishing, and I just kind of put it out of my head that it was just not an option anymore. And then I heard of E.L. James, the whole 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon, but she had actually self-published her trilogy before it was taken up, and I mean, she made pots of money in it movies and the whole lot. So it's kind of inspired by her story. So I looked into it, and I mean, the reality is it was Amazon. If you have a Word document, you upload it into Kindle. It's very user friendly. But then I had to learn everything from scratch. So I had to get a stock photo. I didn't know what that was. I had to copyright that. I had to pick a font. I had to pick a name for the book, write the blurb, do all of that myself. But the interesting thing was the IBSN number in a book as well. You have to buy one if you want your own one, and it can cost up to €1,000. So Amazon offer them for free, but they tie you up within that. So at the time, I didn't care because I had nothing anyway. So my first three books were IBSN with Amazon, the whole lot. But I remember the margins, Jesus, the margins, trying to get them right. And, it's all, they give you this sort of to-do list, and the page numbers, God almighty, trying to start page 1 on page 3 and all these things. But anyway, it made me what I am today because I understand so much more about the process of books now. And really what I wanted was to actually hold a book in my hand, because ebooks were great. I used to get maybe 20 quid into my account every month, people would buy them or whatever, but it was actually holding the book. So I learned about CreateSpace, and CreateSpace is with Amazon as well. So basically you're not printing loads of books and left with them in boxes. They're only printed when somebody orders them, but that renders it very expensive. So your book, there was no profit, zero profit, but the books were working out at maybe 13 or 14 euro a book. And for an unknown, unpublished author, really, it was kind of crazy. So it was just, messing really in the beginning. But the PR side of it as well was massive. I learned so much there as well with Facebook and Twitter, and, all the PR was left to me, and I loved that. It was really, really good. But to be fair, I do a lot of that myself still. Poolbeg are great, they're lovely, but you get your 6 weeks with them really when the book is released, and then they move on to the next author. They're busy with all of that. So really everything I do is kind of stemming from me really as well. So it's a full-time job, but I really enjoy that. I love that. Just coming up with different ways to get noticed, I suppose, really. So it's good.
And I suppose in the current climate and in 2020, a lot of the plans that you had for book signings and larger
Oh,
events, they all
terrible,
went
yeah.
the wayside. Has virtual events stepped in, or?
No, I think we were all so shell shocked at the time. I mean, looking back on it, if it were now, I probably would have set up, definitely done, pre-recorded virtual events and put them on it online and things like that. But so I was supposed to go to London, Dublin, Galway, Waterford. I had all these places to go. And then suddenly, I think it was the week before we locked down from school, so it was in March, I had my launch in Skibbereen, and then suddenly there was nothing, and everything obviously rightly was cancelled. And you get your 6 weeks and that's it. But I was luckier than most. Colleagues of mine in Poolbeg, they actually didn't even get a book launch, and some of them didn't even get books in the shops because there was just a big kind of standstill, I suppose, for a while because all the shops are closed. And so it was kind of disappointing, but look, it is what it is. And, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a massive deal. And a lot of people did read. I think Gabriella sold quite well because people were at home and they had nothing else to do. So yeah, I mean, God, in the event, God forbid, of another lockdown, I think I'd be far more savvy and how to deal with that. I think people have been amazing and inventive during this pandemic in so many ways. And I think, that's the beauty of humanity. I suppose we just, get on with it and we find ways to get around it. So yeah, bring it on. I'm just hoping it doesn't happen for my 6th one next year, because I want some wine fueled book launches. Yeah.
So
So
say
we'll
we all.
see. I know.
So, I mean, and with the next book and with Poolbeg in general, did having a publisher like Poolbeg, did that change your relationship and approach to writing to an extent?
Oh
They
yeah.
were doing. Was there a kind of a period of adjustment when you were, I suppose, marching to the beat of someone else's drum, schedule wise, etc.?
Yeah, like working with an editor was interesting. I learned so much from her. But yeah, you would come to blows about certain things, and initially I would just roll over and say, yeah, no problem. But the last time now we did have arguments about certain things, and in the end I would say, no, I'm going to go with this, because that's where it came from, my head, my imagination. But as I mentioned before, your confidence does grow and you kind of believe in yourself a little bit more. But yeah, no, there are deadlines I didn't have before. I suppose when I first signed with them, as I said, I had a newborn, but we rebranded and redrafted really a lot of the original trilogy. So because the IBSN was with Amazon, they had to be just gotten rid of, and there were whole new titles, whole new covers, the whole lot. And it was great to be able to do that, actually. But I was so busy. I 3 books to get ready by in 6 months kind of thing, with a small baby and breastfeeding and the whole lot together. So it was really, really tough. And all the while I had to have Gabriella ready for the September, which was my 5th book. But the one thing I will say is they do curtail me in my length. I tend to go mad, and I have 160,000 words, no problem. And it's expensive to publish. So they don't care if it's a masterpiece or if it's, as we mentioned before, James Joyce, they don't care. They just want it to be a certain size. So actually, book 6 was born out of the surplus of book 5. And now I'm working on book 7, which is born out of the surplus of book 6. So maybe it's a good thing. But actually it does make them better, and they know their craft, they know their target audience, and they know what people want. So yeah, it's just been really, really interesting.
I think you should maybe strike up a pen pal conversation with George R. R. Martin to maybe get those last couple of books over the line.
I
He could
know, I
definitely,
know. He probably
he
got a
could.
fat check not to do it, I'd say, before the TV program was
I
released.
wonder
But
if,
look, who
yeah,
knows? Who
after that
knows?
last season, maybe the fandom is gone now.
Don't, please. I can't even talk about that. That's just,
It's too
I
soon. We'll
can't. I
move. We'll
think
move
it's
on.
too
We'll
soon.
move.
It's too soon.
But I suppose speaking of TV adaptations, you're now exploring screenwriting.
Yeah.
And how does that differ from how you would approach your novels and your books? And is that learning something new again from scratch to an extent, or how have you approached that?
Massively. I mean, I haven't a clue, really. I always wanted to do it. Oh, it's just been a dream of mine forever. And so during lockdown, that's when I started adapting my 4th book, because I can always see it on screen. I just have so much, I want to share it with the world visually as opposed to anything else. So yeah, sat down, Googled how to do it, did it all wrong, of course, and then went back and went through it again. And oh my God, it's just, been an amazing experience. I flew through it, spent the summer at it, but could imagine and visualize flashbacks in my head, and scenes and camera angles, and it's just a totally different way of expressing everything. But yeah, so I'm kind of in the process, I suppose, of getting it out to people and out to and maybe it'll be taken up, maybe it won't. I mean, there's a million people like me, but I don't know, I just have a feeling that it has something. I can't explain. I just feel like it will. But the only problem is I'm such a control freak that I'll have to be involved in it, because like, somebody might take it and offer me money to change it or whatever. I probably wouldn't take it because it's my baby. And yeah, um Jilly Cooper actually said that in one letter. She said, Jesus, don't let them F it up, she said, because I've written scripts before, and that can happen. So I actually am in a position where I can be quite choosy. But having said that, nobody's knocking on my door yet. But yeah, I'm in the process of kind of getting it ready now. So I'm really excited. And I mean, if this works out, I've a million things I'd love to adapt, like my other books, but also I'd love to do a great adaptation of Wuthering Heights. I think it deserves a good film. There's no really good film of that, and I would love it. I love that now. That would be my big thing.
So you want a director's credit for that, producer's credit for that? Have you
Yeah.
got your cast or ideal cast already plotted?
Yeah, well, no, I don't even have a cast, but like, I mean, it's just, I'd say I'd be painful now, to be honest, involved. But look, you never know. And I suppose, yeah, I have a feeling, I just can't explain. I have a feeling in my bones that this will take off some way. In some way, someone will take it on. Because it's just a lovely story. And I can imagine people sitting down on a Sunday night watching it and getting invested in the characters. And yeah, so yeah, might put my 5 children through college. It would be great.
Every good luck with it.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's great to see, and it's it's a different writing discipline to a degree, but when you're writing, find there's a cross pollination. Is the fact that you're screenwriting now impacting how you're writing your most recent book?
It is. I suppose I wouldn't be as it's more sparse in its description and things like that. I think the new one, it wouldn't be as kind of wordy or flowery, which is interesting actually. But no, I mean it's just a different discipline, really. But and actually, what was lovely about adapting the fourth book was, I could kind of play God and get rid of bits I didn't like, or bits, And actually, when you're dealing with an audience like that, it's different because you kind of have to stick to the main USP, which for me would be the kind of brother, stepsister kind of dynamic. But like you're sticking to that more than anything else. So anything superfluous is sort of shaved away, and you in a book you can get away with that, but in a program you can't. I mean, people's interest will wane, and you have to think about it, in episodes. And like, so my first episode, there's a flashback and it's dramatic and it's whatever, because I want somebody to come back the next week and watch the next one. So you're thinking about that all the time. But I watch enough TV now to kind of pick up tips and bits and pieces. But please God, no, it'll work out. It would be so exciting. And I've already given loads of parts to like people at Skibbereen Market, because there's a market scene. So like Chicken Dave, he's the guy I buy my chickens off, and he's practicing his Cornish accent now to be in it. So it's a bit of a laugh. Look, we'll see. You never know.
What would you like to achieve next year?
Well, obviously the script going somewhere would be great, but it's a slow process. I mean, I'm not, I understand it can take months even to get read or even looked at. But also my sixth book will be out at some stage. Like, we don't know yet because of the pandemic and everything like that. And to be honest, I'd like to wait and get, the full kind of value out of it. I'm also working on a project with tutor, an old tutor of mine in UCC, where he asked me to contribute a chapter to a book that they're writing about English teaching. So that's going to be published by Cork University Press. So that's, a different style now, because I've done a little bit of academic research before and I had it published. So it's completely different to popular fiction, but I really enjoy that too. And I mean, there's another article I want to do as well on student identity with social media and stuff. But again, down the line, I'm planning on all this next year. But yeah, I love that kind of thing as well. So we'll see. But I'm busy, so busy. But it's great.
I don't think you would know how to be any other way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
This is just the norm now.
Yeah.
What piece of advice would you give to aspiring authors who would be listening? What would you, if you could go back and in 2011 when you started writing, I think you described it in an interview, in earnest, although you've always been writing.
In earnest. Yeah, well, it was.
What would you do differently now, knowing what you know now?
It's hard to give advice without cliches, really, but I suppose I would have maybe looked for an agent. But then it's easy to say that now. Back in Caragh, back in 2011, wouldn't you dreamt of doing such a thing? I didn't even think I'd ever be published. So, but actually having an agent, it takes a lot of, they know people, they know where to push you. It's very hard doing PR on your own. So yeah, that would be something maybe down the line that I would look at. But I suppose the big thing about writing as well, for a lot of people, it's not their main job unless you're very, very lucky. So don't let it define you. If you get rejected, you have to just pick yourself up and get on with it, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. And it's very depressing to do that. And, the other thing would be the writing community hashtag on Twitter is very good as well. There's thousands and thousands of members and they're very, very supportive. But again, PR, social media, we have been given platforms that previous generations didn't have, and we can use it, and people love watching videos and responding to different reviews, and you have to keep on it and you have to keep active. But I suppose, yeah, that would be all I would say, really. But just don't ever give up, because I was so lucky, really fortunate, but you can do it. I think anyone, if I can do it, anyone can do it. So it's a great
Well,
thing.
it speaks to your dedication that you've got it this far, but also the amount of perspiration that went with the inspiration to put it together. And I suppose, if what's that line that a famous golfer uttered, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And what you've
Yeah.
done, it's on dint of your own effort and your commitment to the craft to get it to this point. So your modesty is
Mm.
appreciated, but in this instance, I don't think it's needed.
Well, well, okay. But no, it is, it is. It's both. It's both. But I do work
Yeah,
hard at it, but I love it. So it's not really hard work, you know.
it's good to do what you love. And when you're doing something you
Yeah.
like, it's not doesn't seem like hard work at the time. No, I can certainly
No,
appreciate that.
no, no.
And
Yeah.
I suppose the last couple of questions are back to more my wheelhouse, and I suppose where I would have a particular interest, and we're going to focus a little bit on the tools that you use for your craft.
Hmm.
But on a more whimsical note, if there was to be a celebrity narrator for your books on Audible, and who would you choose, and why would you choose the celebrity narrator?
Well, it's actually a fellow Corkonian. I just love Killian Murphy. I love him. And I was listening to his voice. He's just beautiful. And he was doing some sleep story. The celebrities do sleep stories and you can pay and they, talk you to sleep or whatever. But he would just be great. He's like my celebrity crush now. I'd run away with him. But just imagine him now reading my kind of novel, with the saucy bits and everything. Be great. He's just lovely, but also from
Of
Cork.
course.
And let's
And he
face
wouldn't
it,
be
we're the
narrating it
best.
in the Tommy Shelby vein. It would be
Well, yes, yes, yes. In fact, that would be okay too. I wouldn't say no.
fair enough.
Yeah. So yeah, Killian Murphy or Leonardo DiCaprio. But I don't know about the American twang. I'm thinking, no, I'd probably go with Killian.
What piece of technology can you not live without, and why?
My iPhone, my iPhone, 100 million billion%. And I suppose I remember I got it for Christmas, the first generation iPhone back in the day, and I hadn't a clue. I remember going down to Callan's bar in Skibbereen, and I met my friends for drinks, and suddenly I pulled out this phone, and I was, pressing apps, and they were like, "What is that?" And I was like, "I can Google on this," and we couldn't believe it. Like, I mean, I had a Nokia up to that stage. So it just took off from there. But like, oh my God, I am obsessed. And, sometimes then I wean myself off it, on a Saturday. I say, no, don't go near it now for the day. And I think about it and I think about it. And then at about 7 o'clock, I reward myself with getting my phone back and then thinking that I've missed so much. And then there's just a couple of emails from, Marks and Spencer or whatever. There's nothing, not even a message or anything cool. But yeah, love it. And my husband's the same. We're all the same. We're terrible. I mean, everyone is just sitting around at night on their phones. But, I love being on the pulse and I love Twitter, especially. I love it. And you're never alone on Twitter because it just updates constantly. So you can read and it's witty and it's funny. And yes, it's depressing in parts, but no, my phone is my thing. I
Have you found
just
yourself
adore
falling
it.
into the trap potentially of doom scrolling during the current climate? The
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. And I really enjoy the comments, especially under the Independent article. Oh my God, like, and you read it and, the anti-teacher brigade as well. I think that's very amusing as well. So I read them
amusing
all,
and
but
disheartening
it's,
both.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, and I read my reviews, which is worse. And I remember oh my God, when I was starting off and this one put in, oh, this book made me want to wash out my brain. And I remember being really, really insulted. And I said, who is this person? But actually, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And actually, it's probably my best and funniest review. So I cling to
Wash out
that.
your
And
brain.
yeah. Yeah, wash out her brain. So, whenever I get cocky or full of myself, I think of that. So, yeah, you can't please everyone. I think that's the most
A
important thing.
former president of UCC, the phraseology he used for trips to Dublin, I think for NUI meetings or early NUI meetings in the 1920s, was that they left him needing a moral carbolic bath when he returned home. It's like, oof.
I can imagine. Oh
So
my God.
it's the biting phraseology that tends to stick in your mind more, I find.
Yeah, I just liked it.
No,
I thought
indeed.
it was great. So, yeah.
In terms of the software that you use day to day for your writing your books, it's Microsoft Word for.
Yeah, that is part of my contract. I mean, when I signed my contract with Pullbeck, they want it in Microsoft Word, and that's how they comment and edit it or whatever. But on a daily basis at school, we use Google Suite. I kind of have both going on. I have my Chromebook and I have my Mac. But yeah, so one is sort of work every day, school, and the other one then is kind of my playtime and my writing and my kind of whimsical stuff. So it's
And with the screenwriting, is there a particular software that you've started using for that, or have you adapted or bent
well,
Microsoft Word to your will?
yeah, I kind of bent it to my will, which I probably shouldn't have done, but I wasn't really au fait with the best one to do, and I was kind of hoping that somebody would read it and be so swept away by how great it was that they would do it for me, or somebody would come along and do it. There's people out there who are trained in this. I'm not. I mean, I'm real nobody in this. But having said that, what I did come up with is similar, and it gets what my point across. And I suppose I'm back where I was with my self-published books. They were appalling, but the story was there, and Poolbeg saw that, and they saw the potential in that. So that's what I'm hoping will happen with this. No, I mean, I'd have to
But it's from
train
that
for
process
that
where the
properly.
learning comes from to a degree. As in, you learned a lot from
Totally. And
reworking your books, and likewise from reworking the scripts,
yeah,
if that comes
yeah.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would never say I was a proper scriptwriter. I'm not, but I do. I read up on it, and I look at actual scripts as well, and I try and emulate
But
that.
have you seen the Michael
But
Bay
there's
movies?
loads of
You've seen the
software.
Michael Bay movies. You don't need a proper script to make a movie. You don't even need a script.
Exactly. And actually, a really good friend of mine, he's a writer as well. He's a journalist, and he's writing a book as well. But Dan, and he said, rules are made to be broken, and they are. Like, who decides anything? So if I want to write it on Microsoft Word, I'll write it on Microsoft Word. But like down the line, yeah, I'll probably want to get some kind of software. But me now in technology, I'm just, scared of it. So yeah, down the line.
No, that's fair enough. What piece of advice? So you've already covered the piece of advice that you'd have for those starting out, and that persevere
Yeah.
and leverage social media to your advantage. Would you?
Yes, I
Yeah.
think so.
So, and not get too disheartened by the negative comments, even if some of them
Yeah.
stick in your mind, such as needing to wash out your
Yeah.
mind.
And you will be rejected. You will be told that it's not right, or they might use euphemisms, but like you will. And just remember that the greatest writers out there were rejected. I always think of J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter in the bin, and somebody picking it out just by pure chance. It's luck as well. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You don't just walk in there. It is luck. It's serendipity. It's meeting somebody at the right time or making a connection. But you can only do what you do and hope for the best. And if it's meant for you, it won't pass you.
To be honest, I think in the current climate, your brand of escapism that you're writing is just what the world is looking for. So, every good luck for the future.
Yeah.
And thanks a million
Yes.
for your time, Cara, and for taking the time to
Oh,
speak
thank
on
you.
the inaugural Cork Creative Podcast.
I'm so honored to be asked, honestly. It was just lovely. Thank you so much.
If you'd like to learn more about Cara and her books, you'll find information and web links at corkcreative.ie/Caragh Bell. And we hope you'll come back on the podcast in a couple of years, Cara, as the movie and TVs are in the works, and you've got producer rights, and Wuthering Heights is in the works also, no doubt.
Yeah.
Every good luck for the future, and I hope in 2021 all your goals are achieved. I
Yes.
think we're all looking forward to putting 2020 in our rearview mirror. Most certainly.
Absolutely. But listen, thank you so much. And
Thanks a million, Cara.